statutes. The bill that was introduced through Bill C-377, Mr. Speaker, was an onerous bill, provided extra red tape to unions, and did nothing to further employee and employer bargaining process. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Don Valley North.
Mr. Speaker, I address you for the first time as a first-generation immigrant, as a member of Parliament, and most importantly, as a Canadian. I thank the people of Don Valley North for electing me to improve things locally, including transit, health care for seniors, and jobs for youth. I thank my many supporters, my campaign team, and my family, especially my secret weapon, my 9-year-old son, Connor Tang, who campaigned with me door to door across a diverse and vibrant riding. And you can do it, Dad, he said. Yes, we can do it, Connor, I smiled. And we did, we won. And so, honorable colleagues, I say we can do it. We can make things better for the people of Don Valley North and for all Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Solis Moose Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize Kelly and Joanne Pandluck and their children Riley, Mary, and Ellie. Last year, they financed construction of the high-tech running track for the Saskatchewan Summer Games taking place in Estevan this July 2016. They have sponsored teams in minor softball, baseball, and hockey. With the reality of the downturn of the economy in Saskatchewan, oftentimes donations are placed on the back burner. However, this family makes an impact to Saskatchewan as a whole. On January 12, 2016, the Pandlucks made a $450,000 donation to the Children's Hospital Foundation of Saskatchewan, on top of a $50,000 hospital donation made earlier to the Child Life Zone. A new multidisciplinary room will provide space for children at risk to genetic, neuromotor, and metabolic disorders. The Pandlucks are a humble family. They do this out of the goodness of their hearts. They give back to their community, their province, and their country. Thank you, Kelly and Joanne.
The honourable member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute and recognize an organization of my riding of Etobicoke Lakeshore. There's a saying that many may be familiar with in this House: the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Mr. Speaker, I now have evidence to prove this. Lakeshore Moms is a group of mothers who host a variety of activities including playdates, walks, and seminars. Their efforts to bring neighborhood families together is a testament to the community spirit in my riding. Recently, this group directed their considerable resources and networks in support of the Syrian refugee crisis. They created the committee called the Lakeshore Syrian Connection. When they began, their goal was to raise $30,000 to sponsor a Syrian family. Underestimating their abilities and the considerable support behind them, in a very short time since they started, they've already raised $60,000. All of this fundraising was done through a series of community events, including public skates, raffles, and this coming weekend at Comedy Night. I'm very proud that this group, like many others in my community, have undertaken this initiative to help the unfortunate. So, Mr. Speaker, as they say, the hand that rocks the cradle truly does rule the world.
The honourable member for Rimouski, Neigette, Témiscouata des Basques. We will be marking a 150th anniversary in my riding starting next week, that of the beautiful municipality of Saint-Mathieu-de-Riou in the MRC des Basques. Saint-Mathieu-de-Riou is a little gem in the riding that I have the honour and privilege to represent. Lake Saint-Mathieu, which is very beautiful, is still one of the best-kept secrets in Quebec, and the KOA Lower Saint-Laurent camping grounds is the only 5-star one in eastern Quebec. This city is not hibernate during the winter. It has a wonderful ski resort, and we even have a vineyard, Domaine du Lac. In fact, despite the economic difficulties of my region is suffering, Saint-Mathieu-de-Riou is one of the rare municipalities to see its population grow and get younger. I will be there on this Saturday for the opening events. There will be 36 more over the course of the year, exhibitions, guided tours, and even a parade. I invite you to taste the hospitality of the residents over the course of this very special year.
Boniface Saint-Vital.
The honourable member for Saint-Boniface Saint-Vital. Mr. Speaker, you are all invited to Saint-Boniface from the 12th to the 21st of February. We'll be celebrating the Festival du Voyageur, celebrating the joie de vivre as only we know how to do. The 47th edition will marry the cultures of Francophones, Métis, Anglophones, English, and Scots in order to pay tribute to our history.
Voyageurs is a vision of the diversity of our first settlers, a diversity that continues to make Canada the envy of the world. On vous attend.
Saint Boniface awaits you. The taffy's on the snow, the caribou is cold, the pea soup is delicious, the instruments are tuned, and the snow sculptures are carved.
12th to the 21st, come and experience the real joie de vivre in Saint Boniface, Saint Boniface.
The honourable member for Caribou, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, the Premier of British Columbia was in town this week with representatives from key industries such as forestry, tourism, construction, and LNG. Forestry is one of the cornerstone industries in the province of British Columbia. Half of the jobs in my riding are dependent on the forestry industry. Mr. Speaker, we currently stand without a softwood lumber agreement. Our province continues to wait for clarity on key resource projects that will create thousands of well-paying jobs. So I repeat once again, high-speed transit does nothing for constituents in my riding. It will not fix the skyrocketing unemployment rates in Western Canada. It will not put food on the table. So I ask my colleagues from across the floor, rather than telling those hardest hit to hang in there, who is going to stand up for Canadians such as my riding of Caribou, Prince George?
The honourable member for Nepean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honourable colleagues, I wish to recognize an individual in my riding of Nepean, Heather Rose, who on Wednesday received the Everyday Political Citizenship Award from Samara, Canada. This award celebrates positive political role models and builds a culture of positive politics in Canada. Heather was nominated for starting the Ontario Special Needs Roadmap for School. This helpful guide links all of the autism and special needs services available to parents in the province of Ontario. Having a child with special needs can be challenging, and Heather, along with her colleague Kim Peterson, made it their mission to simplify the list of services available. I wish to thank Heather and Kim for helping parents across the province of Ontario. Thank you.
The honourable member for West Vancouver Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, this week we have emphasized the importance of equity and employment, and therefore I rise to recognize a triumph at home in BC. An organization that represents a vital industry, employs thousands of people, and plays a key role in our economy. Today, I want to put the emphasis on the amazing work done by the BCMEA in the fight for equal pay.
BC Maritime Employers Association has earned the designation of Employment Equity Leader by the Canadian Human Rights Commission in the water transportation industry. Between 2011 and 2015, Women on the Waterfront has been a concerted effort to increase the proportion of women in their workforce, traditionally very male-dominated, by almost 50%. Also, the Human Rights Commission has stated that the BC Maritime Employers Association continues to exceed expectations with respect to employing Indigenous peoples.
The honourable member for Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On December 11th, the Minister of Finance announced changes to the rules on insured mortgages to address what he has since called pockets of concern in the housing market, by which we presume he refers to Toronto and especially Vancouver. Yet the CIBC's chief economist has pointed out that these changes will have almost no effect on Canada's hottest markets. Instead, they will pour cold water on markets like Calgary, Victoria, Edmonton, and Hamilton, making it harder for some families to buy a home. His report says, and I quote, "The largest impact will be on Calgary, not exactly a city that needs additional cooling." This report also doubts that these changes will meet the minister's stated objectives. Mr. Speaker, this government wants Canadians to save while it borrows billions of dollars, breaks its election promise of a limited $10 billion deficit, damages the Calgary housing market, and fails to address its own concerns about the Canadian housing market.
The honourable member for Edmonton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I rise today to congratulate the Edmonton Oilers on becoming the first NHL team to take to the ice using Pride Tape. The Pride Tape campaign asks participants to use rainbow-coloured hockey tape,
to promote inclusiveness for LGBTQ athletes. L'équipe des Oilers.
The Edmonton Oilers and I hope that other teams will join in this initiative to help make the National Hockey League the most welcoming sport for LGBTQ athletes.
It was launched in my home city of Edmonton, a city that proudly supports diversity and human rights. I look forward to seeing more teams join the Edmonton Oilers in supporting LGBTQ youth with Pride Tape. Mr. Speaker, success in sport is about the love of your game, not who you love. And in my city and in our country, every young person should feel welcome to lace up their skates with pride and get in the game. Thank you.
We have a member for Canada Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to bring to the attention of the House the remarkable achievements and the contributions of the Canadian forces around the world over the last few months. Today, over the last 2 weeks, I have had the honour of being at the Ottawa airport to welcome home members of the Canadian forces from Op Unifier from Ukraine and Op Provision from taking care of the Syrian refugees. And I'll tell you that they've made a huge difference in many lives around the world. And not only the members of the Canadian forces, but also their families who made sacrifices and gave their members of the Canadian forces to serve all of us and to serve people around the world. Thank you.
The honourable member for Dauphin, Swan River, Neepawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday of this week, we buried Elgin Red McConnell of Hamiota, Manitoba. Father, grandfather, and beloved husband of Ruth, Red McConnell was a farmer and in many ways epitomized great Canadians. He recognized and lived by the mantra that life is not measured by words or things, but rather by actions and kind deeds. Red was a good farmer, progressive farmer, and a man that was proud to be a farmer. Red wasn't someone who sought awards or recognition. Instead, he was a community pillar and willing to do his part to make his community grow, thrive, and prosper. It's farmers and people like Red McConnell of Hamiota, Manitoba, that make Canada stronger and Canadians the respected people we are. And today, I'm pleased to recognize and honor Red McConnell. He was a credit to his community, his province, and his country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Honoré-Mercier. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to recognize those who are dedicated to the cause on the 26th National Suicide Prevention Week. These people put their hearts and souls into working on this under difficult conditions. They deserve all of our respect and admiration. They do this work with courage, determination, compassion, and giving very much of themselves. At the same time, I have a special thought for the relatives, friends, and families who have seen a relative suffering and in the worst case have seen one of these people take their own lives. I'm also thinking of those who are suffering and who've lost hope. And I say to them, even if you don't see it, know that someone somewhere loves you and that there are resources that exist to help you. Dear colleagues, let us work together to address the despair and isolation and to do away with the taboos that are often felt by those who are suffering in distress, because together we can make a difference.
The honourable member for Elmwood, Transcona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to have been born and raised in Transcona, part of Winnipeg that got its start as a rail town in 1912 as the site of the repair shops for the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway. The CN shops in my riding continue to be a significant employer, and rail lines run through my riding with many, many crossings at Ravenhurst Street, Bourne Drive, Molson Street, Talbot Avenue, Monroe Avenue, and many, many more, Mr. Speaker. That's why rail safety is such an important issue in my riding. We've heard lately about a lack of regulation around the use of remote-controlled train technology and concerns around the fatigue management policies of our railways. I rise today to urge the government to undertake a wide-ranging study of the many safety issues that face Canadian rail today and issue a report to Canadians that explains the risks to them and offers concrete solutions that don't simply rely on industry self-regulation and self-enforcement. In a highly competitive industry like transportation, there's often pressure to cut corners, and people need to know that their regulators aren't subject to those pressures.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In January 2015, Constable David Wynn was shot and killed outside of a St. Albert casino in the line of duty. This incident was completely preventable. You see, his killer was out on bail at the time, notwithstanding that he had 50 prior criminal convictions, 38 outstanding charges, and several failures to appear. And yet none of that was brought to the attention of the judge at the bail application hearing. With that in mind, that's why I'm pleased to join Senator Bob Runciman in sponsoring Bill S-217, which would require the Crown to lead evidence of prior criminal convictions, outstanding charges, and failures to appear at bail application hearings. While Constable Wynn can never be returned, together we can honor his legacy by passing this much-needed legislation.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Mr. Speaker, it is with great regret that I stand before you today to inform my colleagues of the death of a former federal member of parliament, Mr. Gérard Laniel, who represented the people of Beauharnois-Salaberry from 1962 to 1984. Mr. Laniel passed away on February the 2nd at Salaberry de Valleyfield. His career, Mr. Speaker, was admirable. In the service of his constituents for 22 years, he was a parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Industry and Trade, Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons, President of the International Association of French-Speaking Parliamentarians. On behalf of this chamber, I want to offer my condolences to Mr. Laniel's family, particularly his children, his beloved wife Louise, his children Normand, Marie-André, Michel, Christian, and Jean-François, and his 14 grandchildren. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions orales, oral questions. The honourable member for Simcoe Grey.
To fight ISIS, there's sure a lot of people hearing about it. It's too bad, though, that this group doesn't include anyone in this House. Yesterday, the Foreign Affairs Minister told the House that he'd shared the plan in a meeting in Rome. Overnight, details of the plan were actually revealed all over the media. This government claims to be transparent and open in a new reality. Why is it then that no one in this House has been informed of this plan, not even the rookie new Minister of Defense?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
It will be released in due course, but in the meantime, it's important to see that this plan will be comprehensive, it will be integrated, it will be sustained, it will be a plan that will bring together all the Canadian forces, military, humanitarian, diplomatic, and it will be done in concordance with our allies, the coalition, to be sure that Canada will be more effective than ever in its fight against this awful terrorist group, ISIL.
The member for Simcoe Grey.
Mr. Speaker, the government would have us believe that if we want to order training and humanitarian aid, Canada cannot wage an air combat. But that is a false and dishonest choice. For a year, the Canadian forces have been doing all of these things: training, air missions, humanitarian aid, and they've been doing it well. So why does the government want to place false limits on the Canadian fight against terrorism? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as my colleague, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, has clearly said, we have made the decision to make a strong contribution to the coalition in order to fight ISIL, and we will do so in an integrated and comprehensive fashion, and when the time is right, it will be supported by Canadians. Thank you.
Oh, great.
Mr. Speaker, in 2014, UNRWA schools and hospitals were used by Hamas terrorists to store rockets. In fact, their staff even gave Hamas these same rockets back. That's just one of the reasons why the Conservatives proudly defunded UNRWA. Now, as part of a plan to fight ISIS, the government is proudly providing $15 million to this organization. By including this funding as part of an anti-ISIS plan, is the Liberal government saying that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a root cause of the rise of ISIS? Does the minister believe this is actually the case? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of speculations here and there about will be the plan. But the plan will be there to fight a terrorist group. The plan will be there to support our allies, including Israel. The plan will be there to support all these populations that are all together to fight terrorism and count on Canada and our own allies. And this plan will be more effective than ever.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, this week the Minister of Defence was incapable of telling us about the plan to fight ISIL, and we learned why. Because the Minister of Foreign Affairs was in Rome to present the plan to the international allies, but the Minister of Defence didn't even know about it. Mr. Speaker, why is the Prime Minister hiding his plan from Canadians and even from his Minister of Defence? Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, it is the Conservatives who don't know anything about this. They don't understand. We have a great Minister of National Defence. He's proved it in the past, and he continues to prove it. It's an honour for me to have worked with him on this plan and with the Minister of International Development. We worked hand in hand and jointly with our allies to fight a horrible terrorist group, and we're going to succeed because we work together. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Minister of Foreign Affairs, you said that you have a great Minister of Defense, but you said you're the one who prepared the plan. Now we know that we hear that a terrorist is due to climate change, and so, but we know that when we need to tackle a terrorist threat, we need to tackle terrorists. So, Mr. Speaker, when is this government going to do it?
Je rappelle à mon honorable collègue de Charlebourg-Saint-Charles de parler de rédiger ses commentaires au président. Et quand il dit vous, c'est moi, et la traduction ne fonctionne pas.
The interpretation. So I'm going to continue in French until the interpreting works. And now it's working, so I'd like the people to address their remarks through the chair. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I understand that my colleague is impatient to learn about a plan that is the best one that Canada will ever have had. He'll be impressed, and so will Canadians. He might not say so for political reasons, but I know that he will be impressed. The Honourable Member for Hochelaga. Mr. Speaker, during the election campaign, the Liberals promised to renew the long-term agreements on social housing. If these agreements are not renewed, 365,000 social housing units will be in danger. This year alone, 24,000 households will lose their subsidy if nothing is done. The welfare of the thousands of citizens is at stake. So what is the minister waiting for to sign these agreements and reassure families? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for her question, and I know she works very hard for social housing. And I would like to add that, obviously, during the election campaign, our party promised to invest significantly in social infrastructure. And social infrastructure includes not only social housing, but other kinds of infrastructure. We know that there's a pressing need to build new social housing units, but also to repair those that exist currently. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Hochelaga.
Situation in affordable housing. Canadians want action, not vague assurances with no clear commitments. Hundreds of thousands of Canadians risk losing their homes if the funding of the long-term agreements is not renewed. People are waiting 10 years for social housing. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities has identified housing as one of the most important issues facing cities of all sizes. So will the government sign new long-term agreements and start the money flowing for affordable housing immediately?
The Minister of Transport.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. As we said very clearly, and it is my colleague who is sitting beside me who is responsible for this, we will be making massive investments of $20 billion over 10 years in social infrastructure, and that obviously includes affordable and social housing. In my city, where my riding is, I know that there are 23,000 families who are on the waiting list for social housing. The need is dire. We promised during the election campaign to address it, and that's what we'll do. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, rhetoric is not going to fix this pressing problem that the minister refers to.
The only challenge that municipalities are facing, after years of downloading costs under the previous government, communities are facing crumbling bridges, roads, and water systems. And mayors are here in Ottawa, and they're asking for help. Now is not the time for action. Now is the time for action, rather. Not more rhetoric and empty platitudes. There's $9 billion that's been promised but not spent. Will the government remove all the conservative restrictions on funding and finally get these investments into our communities and get us some action?
The Minister for Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question from my honourable colleague, and I absolutely agree that we need to invest in all types of infrastructure, including social infrastructure, including public transit, including upgrading our old drainage systems. That's why I had such a productive meeting with mayors from across the country yesterday. I'm engaging with my provincial counterparts because we understand the importance of building infrastructure to create jobs, to build strong, sustainable communities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, on another topic, and a very tragic topic, is we all still remember the horrible situation of Lac Mégantic, the fateful day of July 6, 2013, where 47 people were killed. Over 2 years later, the community is still affected, with 2 out of 3 people suffering from PTSD. The people of Lac Mégantic need a break, and they do not want a train going through their downtown. Will the minister today commit to building a bypass route? Yes or no? Honourable Minister of Transport. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had the opportunity to visit Lac Mégantic on Saturday. I know and I understand full well the tragedy and the aftermath that these people are experiencing. They have gone through a terrible time, and they understand that it takes time to rebuild, and we will be there to help them rebuild their lives, their city, their community. And right now there is a study on the possibility of building a bypass railway, and we will wait for that study before making a final decision. Thank you.
Edward Brand.
Mr. Speaker, a simple question for the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. No need for talking points. I'm just seeking some technical clarification for the members of this House. How does the Finance Department come up with the numbers posted on the monthly fiscal monitor?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague. I will use my speaking points just like he did. The only people, Mr. Speaker, who believes that the previous Conservative left behind a surplus are the Conservative themselves, Mr. Speaker. Canadians know better. Mr. Speaker, make no mistake, the Government of Canada will post a deficit for the period of 2015-2016, Mr. Speaker. And that deficit, Mr. Speaker, rests squarely on the shoulders of the actions and inactions taken by the previous government. Mr. Speaker, that's a fact. The previous Liberal government left behind a $13 billion...
Member for Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, that answer either means that Liberals either don't know how the Finance Department does its financial reporting, or they don't want Canadians to know. In either case, it's very troubling. The Finance Minister has inaccurately and repeatedly stated, and I quote, "We inherited a deficit." But his own department said they inherited a $1 billion surplus. Mr. Speaker, Canadians know they inherited a surplus. Liberals in the House yesterday confirmed we left them a surplus. Why is the Finance Minister the only one in Canada who doesn't know?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to say that it's only my honourable colleagues who believe that. You know, what the previous Liberal government did is to leave behind a $13 billion surplus in 2006. The Conservative government, Mr. Speaker, squandered that surplus and accumulated $150 billion of additional debt. Mr. Speaker, we have a plan to grow the economy in this country, invest in our community, invest in our middle class, invest in infrastructure. That's what we were elected upon. That's what we're going to deliver.
The honourable member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, the offer to purchase Great Lakes Power by recently privatized Hydro One has Ontario electricity consumers, who already pay the highest rates in North America, worried that rates will go up even higher. If allowed, one company will have control of 98% of the total transmission in Ontario. What plans does the FedNor Minister have to conduct open public consultations and public hearings as part of the Competition Act review for this transaction?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Economic Development.
I'd like to thank the honourable member for her question, Mr. Speaker. As you know, any transaction that goes on that is subject to the Canadian law of la loi sur la concurrence.
Competition Act. And this bill, this law means that the Competition Bureau must examine all transactions. This is a rigorous process, and as the member knows, the Competition Bureau examines these files independently. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, Hydro One will continue to gouge customers, especially seniors, while Brookfield, the parent company of Great Lake Power, rakes in record profits on the backs of those on fixed incomes. Will the FedNor Minister commit today to launch an inquiry into Ontario electricity rates before more companies like Algoma Steel have to file for bankruptcy protection and even more jobs in Ontario are lost?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, we will allow the Competition Bureau to do its work. As you know, it does its work independently of government, and of course, it will do its work in a very rigorous manner, and we will wait for those results.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is an energy-rich nation, yet Eastern Canadian refineries import 86% of their oil from countries like Saudi Arabia, a regime where people are sentenced to beheading for political dissent, where women aren't legally able to drive, and Nigeria, where rampant corruption has led to targeted oil bombings and irreversible environmental devastation. Mr. Speaker, why doesn't the minister get behind Energy East, world-leading Canadian oil, and Canadian jobs?
Good question. Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, in the 21st century, the only way to get big projects like pipelines built is to do them responsibly and sustainably. That's the hard lesson that we learned from the failed approach of the members opposite, who for 10 years were unable to deliver for the province of Alberta and unable to get resources.
Order. I know the member for Calgary Signal Hill is enjoying this today, but we all have to restrain ourselves. We want to hear the answer to the question. The Minister for Transport has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to finish off, we firmly believe that a clean environment and a strong economy go hand in hand. And that is the job of government, to get our resources to international markets. Only by engaging Canadians, conducting deeper consultations with Indigenous people, are we going to get there. Thank you, Mr.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, Alberta lost nearly 22,000 full-time jobs last month. Meanwhile, the anti-energy Prime Minister spent the last 2 days there posing for photo ops without actually meeting with workers in the field. He should come to Lakeland. When asked if his government would support the Energy East pipeline if it passes through the NEB process, he wouldn't give a straight answer. We've heard enough empty promises and meaningless platitudes. Mr. Speaker, why is the Prime Minister always finding new ways to say no to good-paying, blue-collar Canadian jobs?
Another good question. The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, we know that the only party in this House that has failed Albertans is the Conservative Party. They coasted through 10 years of high oil prices and just couldn't deliver. Yes. We are going to deliver, but we're going to do it by taking into account the fact that we can develop our economy while being respectful of our environment. That is the approach we're taking, an intelligent, scientifically based approach. That is the proper approach for this government to take.
The honourable member for Esquimalt Saanich Soup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On page 71 of their platform, the Liberals promised if they became the government, they would, quote, end Canada's combat mission in Iraq. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, not only has the government failed to end the bombing missions, they refuse to tell this House what their plan is and whether they're actually planning to extend the military mission. Canadians deserve answers, and Canadians deserve to have their say. Will the government commit now to hold a debate and vote on our military's future role in Iraq and Syria? Yes or no?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to remind the honourable member that there was an election. And in the election, the Prime Minister's position was very clear. The position of the former Prime Minister was very clear, and Canadians made a very clear choice. And the very clear choice was to give this government a mandate to refashion that mission, which all of the ministers and the Prime Minister are engaged in, and will refashion it to an acceptable mission that is acceptable to Canadians. And that will be produced in due course.
Honourable member for Laurier Sainte Marie. Mr. Speaker, the bombing mission against ISIL that was initiated by the Conservatives will be ending in just a few weeks, but the government still has not announced a plan for the follow-up and is sending contradictory messages. And the government is not even able to answer a very basic and simple question that I am putting to the Minister of Defence. Will he confirm that there will be a debate and vote on this topic in the House? Yes or no? Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, I will be very pleased to discuss with my colleague once the plan has been made public. I think as Canadians, everyone will be proud of our country's contribution to fight terrorism. We do so with valor, with an integrated and comprehensive plan, along with the Minister of Defence and the Minister of International Development and the Prime Minister. And obviously I will try and do my share as well, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, this morning the jobs report was released, and it doesn't look good for anyone under this Liberal government. 22,000 full-time jobs were lost in Alberta in January alone. Our unemployment rate in Alberta has reached 7.4%. The highest, it's been the highest since 1988. The first time since 1988, it's been higher than the Canadian average.
Unbelievable.
And things are only going to get worse. It's predicted that Alberta's unemployment rate will exceed 8% by the end of 2016. The Liberals' No Energy program is killing Alberta.
Yes.
When will the Minister of Employment finally come up with a strategy that's going to help Alberta's unemployed get back to work?
The Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the members of the House know, we have been working on modernizing the EI system to try and respond to those very people that are losing their job because of this crisis in the natural resource sector. The best opportunity for unemployment is actually...
Order. It's Friday. We're looking forward to getting home. Let's listen up so we can get through this. Let's all pay attention and show respect for each other. Honourable member for Employment has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I couldn't hear myself think. It was so noisy on the other side. Mr. Speaker, the best opportunity that we have to take care of unemployed people is a robust economy, and that's exactly what we're going to do with the infrastructure investments that will be rolling out very, very soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Honourable member for Lethbridge.
Mr. Speaker, January through March is the peak season in the oil patch, but instead of working hard to provide for their families, Western Canadians are now contemplating what they're going to do when their EI benefits run out. Yesterday, the Prime Minister refused to commit to anything until his anti-energy budget comes down. But the crisis is now, and action is needed immediately. So, Mr. Speaker, I have to ask, is the Prime Minister refusing simply to acknowledge that there is a need, or is he just absolutely unaware of it?
Yeah. The Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, on the contrary, our Prime Minister is very much aware of it. That's why he was in Alberta for 2 days this week. He's also aware that there are challenges in Saskatchewan and Newfoundland and Labrador as well. But when he met with the Premier of Alberta, he undertook to fast-track $700 million worth of infrastructure. That is showing an understanding. He also said that Alberta would be eligible for the fiscal stabilization fund that is available when a province goes through a particular difficulty due to the lowering of the oil price. So we do care, and we are taking action right now.
The honourable member for Peace River Westlock.
Mr. Speaker, as a deputy critic for rural affairs, I'm concerned with the direction this government is going. Instead of standing up and supporting all Canadians, this government is pitting rural communities against urban centres. They are signaling infrastructure funds are to be spent entirely in big cities. Shame. Rural Canada is the backbone of our nation. The energy used to heat our homes, the wood used to build our houses, and the food we all eat is produced in rural Canada. Will the infrastructure minister please explain why his priorities seem to leave rural Canada in the cold?
The Honourable Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the previous government, we're going to live up to the commitment that we made to all Canadians, regardless where they live. We have committed to invest in public transit. We have committed to invest $20 billion in social infrastructure. We have committed to invest $20 billion in green infrastructure. All communities are going to benefit from those investments, Mr. Speaker, regardless where they live.
Good. The honourable member for Calgary Signal Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we'll see if the government can live up to this commitment. During the election campaign, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister promised that we would have a slight budget deficit over the next couple of years to fund infrastructure, but then by the end of the mandate in 2019, the budget would be balanced, Mr. Speaker. However, standing in this House the other day, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Speaker, said, we will work towards a balanced budget by the end of our mandate, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask the Minister of Finance, is this another in the string of broken promises of this government, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable comment to Secretary to Minister of Finance.
When I look at the Honourable member, the previous government who left us with $150 billion deficit, additional debt to our country. Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to invest and grow our economy, but we will follow 3 key principles. That's what we said during the campaign. That's what we'll do. We'll continue to have a debt-to-GDP ratio on a downward track. We'll be fiscally prudent in how we invest our money, and we'll get back to a balanced budget by the end of our term. That's what we said. That's what we're going to do.
Honourable member for Elmwood Transcona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister promised to restore good faith with Canada's public service. And while the Liberals have brought real change to the rhetoric of government, we're waiting for real change on the actions of government. The new government promised to repeal the Conservatives' sick leave legislation, but then they showed up this week at the bargaining table, and you know what they put on the table? The exact same Conservative offer, Mr. Speaker. It was good. So we're wondering when are the Liberals going to bring a deal to the table? When are the Liberals going to bring a deal to the table that reflects their promises in the election?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, our government is working hard to re-establish a culture of respect for Canada's fine public service. We will negotiate in good faith with our public service, and we will respect the independence of those negotiations. Unlike the Conservatives, we will not toxify those negotiations by attacking the public service on a continual basis gratuitously. There is an opportunity to modernize sick leave benefits in a way that's fair to members of the public service in a time when we inherited a tough fiscal situation from the previous government.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Neigette-Témiscouata-les-Basques. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The news today on the jobs front is not good.
The unemployment rate is up, with 1.3 million Canadians out of work. What is the government doing? It is slow in delivering on its election plan promises and warning that many people will have to wait. Canadians elected this government thinking that things would be different. It's almost 2017 and people are out of work. The needs are now. The Canadians wanted this government to act differently. When will the government get to work and reassure Canadians and keep its commitments?
The Honourable Minister for Employment.
Speaker, we have been working since the day that we got elected on fulfilling the promises that we made. We want a system of EI that's going to be there when people need it and where they need it. We promised to lower premiums, cut benefit, wait times from 2 weeks to 1 week, and improve flexibility for Canadians. Those are all measures that we are working on diligently, and we will be rolling out as soon as possible.
Yes. The Honourable Member for Fredericton.
Mr. Speaker, les Canadiens connaissent...
Canadians know the importance of the audiovisual industry for our economy and for the promotion of arts and culture across the country.
The Minister of Canadian Heritage signed an audiovisual co-production treaty with the Ambassador of Ireland to Canada. Est-ce que le ministre...
Can the Minister explain how this treaty will benefit the Canadian audiovisual industry? The Honourable Minister of Heritage. I would like to thank my honourable colleague for his question, and I am proud to announce on behalf of our government that we have signed a first agreement with Ireland on audiovisual cooperation. We have good news. We have Room and Brooklyn, which are two films, co-productions with Ireland that are up for the Oscars. So this treaty will help us adapt to new technologies and develop more stronger relations with Ireland.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this government wants to eliminate mandatory minimums for repeat and violent offenders. And now the Minister of Public Safety has said that the government wants to make it easier to hand out pardons to convicted criminals. So, Mr. Speaker, are there any criminals out there that this government doesn't want to go easy on?
Good question. Mr. Secretary to the Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the honourable member for that question. We believe that mandatory minimum should be the exception and not the rule, and that's the reason we are conducting a complete and comprehensive review of the changes to sentencing and the changes to parole that were brought in under the previous government. The most serious offences should have the most serious sentences. However, it's not a one-size-fits-all, and a comprehensive review of the criminal code is necessary, and that's what we are undertaking. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Public Safety characterized changes brought in by the previous Conservative government to prevent child sexual predators from ever receiving a pardon as ideological. Mr. Speaker, will anyone on the government side stand up and tell the victims of child sexual abuse what is ideological about ensuring that those who commit the most heinous crimes against children never again be able to walk our streets and communities in anonymity?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, the criminal justice system in this country is about more than retribution. There are other elements that are important in sentencing. The most serious crimes should attract the most serious sentences. There is a place for mandatory minimums in our criminal justice system, but it isn't everywhere. That's the reason why we are undertaking a comprehensive review. We are going to ensure that judges' hands are not tied and that mandatory minimums are there for the most serious offences like the ones that the member just referred to. Thank you.
The honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, this government seems completely unable to protect Canadians. The Chinese government wants to cut a free trade deal with us. While we welcome investment and trade, we expect our partners to respect the basic standards of justice and law. Kevin Garrett and his wife have been confined and harassed by Chinese security officials for over a year. Now Kevin is facing phony espionage charges. What is this government doing to secure Kevin and Julia Garrett's release? And will they put the Chinese government on a notice that this treatment is completely unacceptable?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it's a very serious situation. We're very preoccupied by that. We have communicated how much we disagree with the situation for Mr. Garrett and his wife to the Chinese authority. We'll continue to do so, and it's something that this government does not accept at all.
Right.
The honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, it's not only faith groups across Canada that have expressed support for the important work of the Office of Religious Freedom. When Michael Ignatieff was asked about the office, he said, this is the very thing that should have the support of all sides in politics, and all Canadians believe in the importance of defending religious freedom at home, but also defending religious freedom abroad. And he said that the defense of religious freedom is unconditional. So I want to ask the government, in spite of all of these voices, why is this government so determined to destroy the mandate of the Office of Religious Freedom?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, the question was asked in English, but I will respond in French. Of course, we do need to make sure we protect the freedom of religion, and we will be doing that. We are going to improve our protection. So we believe that rights have to be protected as a whole, and they are interdependent. And that is the approach we are going to take.
Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, the NDP supports giving all Canadians the opportunity to enjoy our natural and cultural heritage. We welcome the promise of free admission to our national parks in 2017. But, Mr. Speaker, user fees are also a major source of revenue, and Canadians are worried about the serious funding crisis facing our national parks. Conservatives cut staffing, slashed Parks Canada's budget, and put our parks' ecology and infrastructure at risk. So will the minister restore the Conservative cuts to Parks Canada and offset this revenue shortfall?
Honourable Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would say that I'd like to confirm that we are committed to significant spending in terms of our national parks and our historic sites. That is part of my mandate. We will make sure that we have the funds necessary to continue to meet the mandate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, human trafficking is a reality here in Canada. In 2015, in Laval alone, 33 young female runaways were sexually exploited. We need prevention, and we need a lot of resources on the ground. But one thing we can do now and here is to implement Maria Mourani's bill that was adopted here last year. The bill would help prosecute those who exploit our girls. Can the government tell us if it will quickly set a date to bring this bill into force?
A Minister for the Status of Women.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for her concern and obvious work on the issue of violence against women and girls. Preventing and addressing violence against women and girls is a priority for this government, and we're working with a range of key stakeholders to address this issue, including the launch of a national public inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, developing a federal gender violence strategy, and enhancing Canada's network of shelters and transition homes. We're confident that this range of actions will reduce violence and end this scourge against our society. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal House Leader wrote intimidating letters to members of the IRB. Letters referring and urging these well-respected judges to step down. There are no indications that these humble public servants haven't been doing their jobs effectively. Why did the Prime Minister and the Liberal House Leader feel that they had the right to interfere by pressuring them to leave their positions?
The Honourable Prime Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let's be very, very clear. The scandal is not on this side of the House. The scandal is on that side of the House, Mr. Speaker. The facts are, in fact, clear. The previous government made serious appointments that took effect after they lost the election, Mr. Speaker. It's time they look in a mirror, and that's where they will see the scandal resides, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Lévis-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, all week the government leader has not been able to defend his political interference. He is not allowed to interfere in the work of tribunals and agencies. So can the government explain why, after only 3 months, the ethical rules that it stood by have gone by the boards?
Parliament Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I had indicated, it needs to be repeated once again for the members. At the end of the day, there were questionable appointments that were made by the former Conservative government. Mr. Speaker, Canadians understand that the former Prime Minister stepped outside of the box in making those appointments, and quite frankly, they're the ones that should be ashamed of themselves for their behavior, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Lévis-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister of Immigration confirmed the members of the IRB, and the minister realized that those appointments were based on merit. So can the Government House Leader recognize this and finally stop this pointless witch hunt and stop this political interference?
Transport.
Honourable Minister of Transport. As has been said many times before, the appointment process has to be respected. We know very well that many appointments were done by the Prime Minister of the previous government just before the election was called. And those appointments are taking effect after the election. The new government should have full flexibility in making those appointments. Thank you. The honourable member for Gatineau. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government committed to protecting the integrity of the Canadian tax system by working to eliminate tax evasion and tax avoidance abroad. Could the Minister of National Revenue inform the House of what new measures are being taken to fulfill that commitment? Thank you. The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague for this important question. I have the pleasure to announce that yesterday I signed an agreement with Switzerland to have both of our countries participate in intelligence oversight on these measures. We want to eliminate tax evasion and protect the Canadian tax system.
The honourable member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, forestry is one of the largest employers in my riding, with lumber mills in West Kelowna, Princeton, and Merritt. And these businesses and their employees all support free trade. And now the Forest Products Association of Canada has come out in favor of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and supports its ratification. Now, the TPP is great for British Columbia. When will the federal Liberals realize they've hit peak consultation, get off the fence, and support jobs in British Columbia?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question. We have begun consultations from the time in which we were elected. The important date is ratification, Mr. Speaker. We are going to look at this treaty carefully. We're going to look at this treaty through Parliament and through parliamentary committees. We're going to continue to consult Canadians until we know we have the evidence necessary to make the right decision that will benefit not just the forestry industry, obviously, but also all Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
The honourable member for Brampton East.
Mr. Speaker, throughout the 11-week campaign, many constituents in Brampton East were excited about the Canada Child Benefit. Indeed, they appreciated that it was a targeted, tax-free benefit that was simple and easy to understand, and that millionaires would no longer be receiving checks. Can the Parliamentary Secretary for Finance please update this House on his commitment for Canadians all across this nation to receive the Canada Child Benefit?
Parliamentary Secretary for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for his good question. In Budget 2016, Mr. Speaker, our government will introduce the Canada Child Benefit, a tax-free monthly benefit to families with children. Mr. Speaker, the CCB will ensure that the maximum help is provided to those families who need it most. We anticipate that payments could start flowing in July of this year, Mr. Speaker. At that point, 9 families out of 10 will be better off with our plan, Mr. Speaker. That plan is going to help to lift hundreds of thousands of children out of poverty, will help families in Brentons and in my riding.
The honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This Liberal government claims they want to consult broadly with Canadians and that they want to be fact and science-based in their approach. Why then, in the 107 days the Liberals have been in office, has there been zero consultation with the science critics on the climate change initiatives, the pipeline environmental review process changes, and the input for science spending for the upcoming budget?
The Honourable Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to say that science-based and evidence-based approach is fundamental to what we do. Very shortly after we formed the government, the Prime Minister hosted our scientists to talk exactly about climate change, a topic that the government, the party opposite, doesn't seem to like to do. We brought our scientists forward, they've talked about science, and all of our policies are based on science and evidence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Joliette. Mr. Speaker, the American authorities are taking their time in certifying Bombardier's Series C aircraft. In the meantime, money isn't coming in, and both the company and its suppliers are starting to have cash flow problems. The aerospace industry is to Quebec what the auto sector is to Ontario, and it is a leading-edge industry, one for the future. So why is the government so eager to free up money for Alberta, but not for the jewel of Quebec's economy? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Economic Development. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government has undertaken discussions with Bombardier, with the government of Quebec, to see what the situation is and what the priorities are. We believe that any investment in that company from the federal government needs to be supported by a solid business plan. But I would say to the member that the aerospace industry is indeed very important. It is an export-driven industry and important. The honourable member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, my colleague's question was clear. When will the government take action? Because this industry accounts for 40,000 jobs and 200 businesses in Quebec. Bombardier might need a line of credit to be able to get through the period until certification. So the question is, when will the government defend the Quebec economy and take action? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. As I said, Mr. Speaker, to the other member across the floor, we do acknowledge that the aerospace industry is very important, that Bombardier is one of the crown jewels of the Canadian economy. We have undertaken discussions with the company and the provincial government, and we will take a decision at an appropriate time. The honourable member for La Pointe de l'Île. Mr. Speaker, in terms of infrastructure, Quebec and the municipalities are getting the bill, but Ottawa has the financial latitude. Major cities in Quebec have been asking for spending money for a long time for infrastructure, but once again, there is no money forthcoming. In Quebec, and particularly in East Montreal, the needs are very major. Will the government take on 50% of the expenditures? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to reassure my colleague that the infrastructure file in Quebec is a very important one. We have met with Quebec Authority. We already indicated before the election that we would be making major investments in infrastructure, and we will certainly be doing so. We know that will stimulate the economy. It is good for Quebec, good for Canada, and we will be keeping our promise. Thank you.
This will conclude question period for today. Is the Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Immigration rising on a point of order?
Yes,
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Immigration.
It arises from debate that occurred prior to question period on Bill C4. The member from Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas, delivered her speech. The first question that was raised to her by member opposite from the member from Dauphin, Swan River, Neepawa was posed to the member from Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas. And then immediately after posing the question, the member proceeded to leave the chamber and heckle the member from Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas, as he left the chamber from his seat as well as from the corridor where those curtains are. Mr. Speaker, I'm a new member. I understand the member from Dauphin is not. I would appreciate some clarification as to whether this kind of behaviour is appropriate, and if not, I would ask the chair to politely intervene. Thank you.
Thank the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for this question. He will know, of course, that as Speaker, and I and all the presiding officers listen carefully, and we try to discourage heckling, of course. And today in question period was a little bit. That's more than I'd like, but it wasn't bad today, and we got a pretty good week on the whole.